We take a look at the strategic error Ukraine made when they failed to properly kiss Donald Trump's ass, with Zelensky saying he's ready to step down and enjoy his riches in whatever country will guarantee his safety. Great news for those with difficulty getting pregnant. New research shows that if you take one night and sleep with everyone on the internet, it raises your odds of having a baby, which has some fertility clinics asking if jizz buckets are the answer to human reproduction, with experts pointing out the willingness of men to participate in such endeavors, and that perhaps the pathway forward as a species is to lay women on their backs with funnels coming from their vaginas and have someone stand on top of a ladder and pour down the jizz buckets down the funnels so that only the fastest swimmers are used in making the next generation of humanity. And for those that think this is too outlandish, how do you better suggest staying ahead of the Chinese robots? Kamala Harris is frontrunner in California, showcasing the suicidal tendencies of voters in the state. New regulations in place, making it that pharma companies can no longer advertise on television, creating a last opportunity to advertise foot cream that may leave your feet itchier and lead to suicidal thoughts. We speak to the victims of these ads, with people saying they started taking medicines they saw on television and then became too depressed to turn the television back on, looking for commercials that might have other cures. As for me, I like to get my medical advice from Instagram, which is why I make sure to have 3 lemons in the morning, an entire thing of butter in my coffee, 12 zins for lunch, mushroom tea and kratom in the afternoon, a late night snack of Bobby's Blue Sauce on some fresh roadkill, followed by creatine, berberine, and anything with an "ine" in it, and I mix it up with kale to keep me with a fresh head of hair to bring you the news.
It's your daily dose of misinformation, pulled from a lately hemorrhoided asshole. It's today's Run Your Mouth!
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. And I swear, people, there are podcast equipment ghosts out there, because not only did I spend days last week on Adderall putting together this brand new podcast board, getting the largest microphone on podcast, and I see you, Mitch, in the comments saying that if I want to impress you, I better put some bricks on the microphone and make it increasingly heavier over time. And who knows, maybe we'll do that. But anyways, I even did an episode of Part of the Problem earlier today, which is going to be coming out in 30 minutes. And then in that juncture of time, I cannot explain this to you. I don't hit the random equipment on my desk. I've killed off all the interns. You know, they were doing a chicken culling and they were getting rid of all the chickens so that the egg prices would go up. It was the last thing that Donald Trump did. I mean, I'm sorry. It was the last thing Joe Biden did to piss off the country, as he said, hey, let's make this other guy look bad and let's kill off all the chickens so they don't have any eggs. And by the way, I've said it 100 times. I'll say it 100 more. Listen to the show, live in the future, and celebrate being right, because my fat ear to the ground, I called it 3 weeks before people were reporting the egg problem. I said, the eggs are disappearing. You can come over to my fridge right now. I got like 9 things of the good pasture-raised eggs. Pasture-raised eggs, they're might be driving up my cholesterol, but they seem to be fixing my other health problems. But anyways, I literally did an episode 3 hours ago, came in here trying to get one done before Part of the Problem goes live, and then the board is not inputting the sound, and I pressed enough buttons that I'm now using a different input. I'm using the digital input instead of the regular input. Listen, same as I called it on the egg prices going up, someone's got to look into these podcast equipment ghosts who keep ruining. And you know what? My lead-in bit for today is I wanted to talk about how retarded people are. That's what I wanted to talk about. But now I feel like I have not earned my right to complain about how dumb other people are when the basics seem to still be a problem for us. But we'll get into it. You know what? We'll pretend like we had no tech problems whatsoever. We came here with a fresh face of hair, makeup done, looked real pretty. Everything was cooking. And I had this thought because, I lift in the living room and sometimes I go to the gym. I sit in the sauna and I swim. I do that maybe once or twice a week. And, there's a lot of confusion around doors, almost too much confusion around doors. People are opening up doors when you're a full 3 blocks away, and then you got to speed up and you feel like a schmuck. And then other times people are too far away and you're like, I think I'm supposed to hold the door open. Let's just get rid of holding open doors unless someone's exactly 3 steps. Doors are not that hard to open. If someone's within 3-step distance of a door, you hold the door open for them. Anything else, it should be considered rude of you to hold the door open because you're rushing the other individual, making them feel like you're like they're imposing on you by not going through the open door. But I've noticed this thing. The whole point of being in a sauna is that you're too lazy to otherwise exercise and you still want to get a nice sweat on. And so the entire thing is you're going to sit in a box that's really hot, and it's a designated box of hotness. And in order for there to be a designated box of hotness, you got to keep the door closed, because if you open up the door, you no longer have a designated box of hotness. You just have a heater for the rest of the locker room, and you're not going to have a hot box. You want to have a hot box. And did these people smoke no weed in high school? Do they not understand the concept of hot boxes at all? And I've noticed these people, and they open it. What's going on in this room? Oh, it's kind of hot. Oh, all right, maybe I don't want to sit in there. And they ruin the entire sauna because they just keep opening up the door, checking it out. They're like, all right, I guess it's kind of hot. I'll go get my stuff. I'll go sit in that too. And then I also noticed this in the airport, in the Delta Lounge, they got the good bathrooms. They got the good bathrooms with the full door, so you don't have to have everyone looking at you while you're trying to take a dump. It doesn't have that little gap in it. It's got a full door. And the problem with the full door is that you might walk up to a door and find out that it's locked. But in the Delta Lounge, they actually treat you like a human being and things actually function. And so, very simple system. They've got red lights and green lights. Couldn't be any easier. I mean, this is like going to kindergarten and trying to put a triangle into the triangle. And if you can't get it into the triangle and you're trying to shove the triangle into a circle, the kindergarten teacher has to look at the mom and be like, do you realize that your kid is going to have to go to the special school, or are you special too that I have to explain to you that if they can't figure out that the triangle is supposed to go into the matching triangle shape and they're trying to shove it into the circle, do you need me to explain this to you? Are you also slow? I'll explain. If I have to explain it, I'll explain it. But I'm hoping that you managed to procreate and so you understand what's happening here. But somehow adults with access to the Delta Lounge don't understand the system of the red light, green light. They've never seen a system of green means go, red means stop. They just stand there. There'll be 4 things with green lights. I've seen it, and they're just pulling on the one with the red light. You're like, how do you not get this? And, it's the problem in this country that not only do these people vote, but I wonder what their inner monologue even looks like, because I spent a lot of time, a lot of circular thoughts are weighing the in and outs. Do I owe this person that favor? Should they ask me this favor? What's the easiest way out of the favor? Should I just ignore the text? Is it ruder to ignore the text? Do I have to explain all my logic and reasoning? Am I just going to be putting, it's just circular thoughts. There's a lot of thoughts going on all the time. And I'm convinced that if I could see the inner monologue of the guy who's trying the red door when there's 3 green lights next to him, I think it's just flat. I think those people are living better lives than the rest of us, where it's just pure nothingness. It's maybe just like a nice light hum, like your neighbor's running his wood saw machine. It's just nothingness. Or maybe it's just the same thought, like a goldfish. It's just like, oh, I've never seen this before. Oh, wow, I get to turn another corner. Oh, wow, there's a corner here again. Do you think they just have like really simple thoughts where it's like they don't get it and they're like, oh, it's the door locked, it's locked. What is this? Was that would be open? You think it's like actually like the inner monologue of a full-scale dumbass, like a Fetterman, but like a post-stroke Fetterman? Or do you think it's just nothingness? Like if you could, imagine if an alien could give you a receiver where you could just like tune your antenna, like you could stand in a room and just tune it and hear people's inner thoughts. I'm convinced that some of the dumbasses of the world, you'd be surprised by that there's just nothing there. And you'd be like, wow, you're like a Zen monk. You just don't even have to filter the thought. There's just nothing there. Anyways, episode is brought to you by sheathunderwear.com. And here's a nice perk of Sheath Underwear that I have not explored in a while because I almost exclusively wear Sheath. But every once in a while, I'm out on the road. I ran out of all my pears, and I got to pull out the old Fruit of the Looms. I was a long-time cotton Fruit of the Loom guy. I like the button. You never want those old man striped prisoner type style boxers. And other than sheath, I would never wear a boxer brief. Sheath is comfortable enough. It doesn't just feel like something's scrunching up. Like, it feels nice. It feels like I'm wearing nothing. Every other time I tried wearing boxer briefs, I just felt like it was back to the tighty-whitey experience where it's just like tightness and uncomfortableness. But I forgot about this. If you're wearing your old school, loose Fruit of the Looms, I forgot about plumber cracks. I forgot about that you could be in an airport. You could be holding 4 bags in every single hand. Your pants could be slowly falling down and you don't have a free hand to pull it up. And you're just trying to ignore the fact that you're mooning the entire airport. I forgot about a good plumber crack. It's been so long since I've had pants falling down where I wasn't at least completely shielded by my beautiful sheath underwear that I literally forgot that plumber cracks can happen. I was plumber cracking that whole airport, and then I realized I got to call up Bobby the bank, and I got to get myself some more sheaths. But for all you people out at home that don't have that sponsor connection that you can just get them mailed right to your door once you complain enough that he hasn't sent you a new package, you can use promo code RYM and get 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. All right, let's get into this episode. I'm going to try and cover everything I want to cover in 30 minutes. Then that way I'm not competing against my own show on part of the problem. Or this show I co-host on. We don't have to split hairs on this. And hopefully in the future, we're going to start doing Sunday nights because I want to be doing more episodes quicker and just shooting from the hip. All right. First is Trump ends New York City congestion pricing, declares legal battle. And like I said, I fully support Donald Trump to whatever extent he just wants to deal with petty gripes. You know, to whatever extent he wants to make toilets flush with better velocity, he wants to get us better light bulbs, or he wants to make it that we can just drive on roads without being charged more money. Every single day spent addressing some petty grievance, such as, the roads were already expensive. How much are you going to charge people who are trying to work for a living? This is getting ridiculous, New York City. There's going to be congestion either way. There's no reason to ruin it for the people that can't afford it. It was a form of rationing, and I approve of this. I was limiting going into New York City. I was sweating out that toll, and good. Kick it to the curb. Let's get away from 15-minute cities and more tracking equipment to make it more expensive to travel anywhere and more cameras knowing where we are at all times. I like what you're doing here, Donald Trump. And so in terms of the good and the bad of Donald Trump, we've done this on every episode so far. I'm giving Donald Trump credit for getting rid of the congestion pricing in New York City. I hope that he wins this legal battle, and let's get rid of it. I come in at night when there's less traffic anyways. Traffic's a part of life, and let's not charge the poor people more to be able to drive their cars in New York City. Runaway Slav, Mike Harrington is still upset that congestion pricing is gone because he's back to paying for parking tickets. That sounds like a fun take. It sounds like a Harrington logic. I'm sure it makes no sense, but sounds like Harrington. All right, now let's get into all of the latest from Zelensky in the Ukraine. I had said it in the intro. Zelensky made a big mistake criticizing Trump. I don't know what leverage he thinks he has. I don't know how he's going to continue this war without us. And well, let me tell you, you don't want to mess with, like, if you need Donald Trump on your side, everyone who has a cabinet position with Donald Trump right now is because they were really good at kissing his ass. If there's one thing you got to know is you don't want to butt heads with Donald Trump, and you don't want to be the one guy that didn't kiss his ass, because he is the queen gay of all the queen gays. Nobody insults better than Don. You want to play this game? And so they came back hard. They're like, that actor doesn't even know the part that he's playing anymore. Believe in the role. And I'm telling you, I mean, if you were looking for U.S. support and you're going to start criticizing Donald Trump in public, you're in for trouble. Not only that, he'll side with Putin. The whole world would agree with him just because it'll be like, yeah, that Jewish kid was being a little bit cunty. All right. And so the latest doesn't really make sense to me, because Donald Trump, he's sitting down with Putin saying, we got to negotiate. We got to put an end to this thing. And then he's also talking to Zelensky and basically saying, we'll continue. This lacks clarity. Is it we'll continue to fund the war, or we're going to give you a security guarantee that does not include being in NATO, but still includes that the U.S. will give you a security guarantee if Russia comes back and tries to reinvade and take more territories. But in order to do so, you're going to have to actually pay us for the security moving forward, and it's going to be 50% of your mineral rights. And at this point, Zelensky's done for. I mean, if you don't have U.S. support, what are you going to do? You're just going to slowly lose more and more territory, more and more lucrative areas to Russia? Are you going to fight without the American support? I mean, if you just continue to piss off Donald Trump and say how much of an evil meanie pants he is, and then he just teams up with Russia, I mean, it sounds to me like you're going to be shit out of luck. And not only shit out of luck, in sales, they talk about urgency. If you can create urgency, that's a win. And that's why you got to lie to people on the phone to pretend like there's urgency when really they got all the time in the world to make a decision. But if you're Zelensky and you're slowly just losing more and more of these lucrative territories, doesn't sound like time is on your side. So I don't quite understand what is even happening here, where Donald Trump is saying that he wants to negotiate an end to the war. This war has been stupid from the start, never would have happened with Donald Trump in charge. And Ukrainians are dying for no reason. It's costing us too much money. Ukraine can't possibly win, so we got to call it a quits. But we'll give you a security guarantee if you throw us some of these mineral rights. So let's explore a few more of these articles. This is the latest from the Wall Street Journal. Ukraine Zelensky wants better terms on mineral deals demanded by Trump. And then this was from the BBC. And it's interesting to me that now we're seeing all these articles about the minerals that exist out in Ukraine. I mean, for all the talk at the beginning of the war, I mean, just think about, guys, you can go back down the Run Your Mouth archive of how many times we talked about how dumb this war was and that it was not going to help the Ukrainians in any capacity. And hey, Ukraine has to be in NATO was a very stupid move by Biden. But then when you throw on that apparently some of the most lucrative areas on Earth for the next generations are what they're claiming, the amount of good minerals that are right in the ground, right on the borders, you think you wouldn't chance that to just being lost to Putin. You would think that you would have a little bit more foresight. This was from the BBC. I'm just saying, to add to all of this stupidity, the fact that golden land was right on the border, you would think maybe you wouldn't want to, like, in other words, imagine a Fort Knox. Nah, it's a bad example. All right, BBC. What minerals does Ukraine have? Kiev estimates that about 5% of the world's critical raw materials are in Ukraine. This includes some 19 million tons of proven reserves of graphite, which the Ukrainian Geological Survey States Agency says makes the nation one of the top 5 leading countries for the supply of the mineral. Graphite is used to make batteries for electric vehicles. Ukraine also has a third of all European lithium deposits. All right, and now this was also from the Wall Street Journal. In terms of just trying to understand what it is that Donald Trump is pushing for, where we're both going to have peace with Putin, but then we're going to work out some sort of a security guarantee with the Ukrainians where we get 50% mineral rights. And by the way, 50% mineral rights is not necessarily a bad deal if we're putting in all the money to develop the land. If the idea is, hey, it's basically like a mining deal where, listen, we're going to spend all the money mining it and then we'll cut you a check for 50% because you currently own it. That's probably not even that bad of a deal. But in this case, as to what Donald Trump is even going for, which is, I guess, peace with Putin, not joining NATO, but the war's going to be over and we're going to get mineral rights and a security, and your guys are going to get a security guarantee. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. Kiev presses for better deal with U.S. on mineral rights. Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, said there was no military guarantees in the proposed deal, but called such guarantees implicit because the U.S. would be so heavily invested in the Ukrainian economy. We want to intertwine the U.S. and Ukrainian economies for the benefit of both, he said, adding that the Russians hate this deal. Bessent said that the verbal assaults between Trump and Zelensky seem to put a bit of daylight between us, but he said that he is confident that there is no, I don't know what this daylight talk is. I don't know why I highlighted that. All right, here's what's crazy to me. Doesn't this just sound like the Taiwan semiconductor situation once again? If, like, in other words, I guess Taiwan theoretically is a strategic asset to the United States of America because of how many semiconductors that they have. But if China decides that they want to go and invade Taiwan, are we actually going to go to war with China over Taiwan? And then would it make sense now that we know that we really need those semiconductors and that perhaps if you want to say that China is an enemy, so does it make sense to have a strategic asset that's unsecured right on the border of the enemy country that you think you might have to compete with over resources? So the idea now is seemingly we're going to have peace with Russia. And but with this peace with Russia, we're still treating them as the enemy, and Ukraine can't be in NATO, and they can't have any security guarantees, but we will partner with them on mining, and rest assured that if our mines are there, then we will feel invested in the security of your country. Listen, the last time when it was just your lives on the line, and it was just us talking about how important it was to protect you guys, and we spent $300 billion over this idea of sanctity of borders, we're willing to admit that was all bullshit. We don't care about the sanctity of borders. We don't care if you guys all die. What we care about is our strategic assets. And so just know that if you partner with us and you give us 50% of what's there, then we'll actually care about what's happening. And unlike being in NATO, we can't actually just put the military equipment here. But if that Putin guy decides to be aggressive again, then we'll come back in here and kicks his ass. Any of this make any sense to you guys? I mean, listen, Ukraine's getting fucked no matter what because they were already fucked by Biden, in which at the beginning of the war, they could have just not done it and helped the really wealthy territories. And then once the war started, at any point in time, they could have just called it a quits and said, you know what, Putin, this was our bad. Can we stop it here and you keep your territory? You can keep what you conquered, and we'll keep this part, and let's call it a quits. And if not, then you're going to really be pissing off all the Europeans and the Americans who are claiming that you're trying to take over all of Europe. And so if right now I'm telling you I won't fight you anymore and you can just keep those territories, and then we won't do the NATO thing, and you want to keep moving east, then that kind of showcases to everyone that you actually are trying to just take over territories. And so listen, Ukraine lost, and then they just lost more and more and more because of the dumb Biden policy of we refuse to say that they won't be in NATO. And until this comes to an end, it sounds like more people are going to die, and Ukraine's going to end up with less of the lucrative territories, which, as I said at the beginning of the show, why would you risk the war if all the good shit's right at the border? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But anyways, this new deal, and maybe I'll reach out to Kyle Asnone or Scott Horton. We'll get them on later in the week. But does any of it make it? What is this new deal? So we're going to end the war, and Ukraine will not join NATO, but they're going to give us 50% of the mineral rights because we fucked them already and killed off most of their soldier and fighting force. And so unless you guys want to have to pay us on the bill of us getting most of your country killed, you better cut us a deal on these minerals. All right, I think that's it from this topic. Let's take a couple comments. Before we do, thank you to our other sponsor, YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo. Only place in the entire world you can get an entire kilo of kratom for just $60. All right, we've got matzo balls. Wonder if Obama and the Bidens knew about all these rare earth minerals. They certainly did, and if they were trying to make sure that they had a hand in them, you think maybe not starting a war with Russia for them to easily take those territories probably just wasn't a great gamble. The Duder. Would a chicken go say, "Bawk"? Maybe. Is that the way you heard it in your head, the way that I did it? Sorry if I butchered that for you. Dave Sarah, this is a much better time slot, methinks. Thank you for the Yoda talk. Yeah, I don't know that middle of the day is an ideal time slot for the fan base. It is a convenient time for me to record, as I like to pretend that if I'm not doing this at night, I'll be going into the city and doing spots. Oliver Klozoff and Oliver Klozoff. You see, if you read as retarded as I am, the Bart Simpson tricks don't work on you. And someone should tell that to Great montages. I mean, that's a Bart Simpson joke as far as I'm concerned, but there are great montages online of people goofing the Soul Cycle instructors with great terrible names. And Oliver Klausoff, you basically got me on that one, so I'll give it to you. And before I read your comment, ADD here, but hopefully the new schedule is going to be late night Sundays, Wednesdays midday, and then Friday for subscribers once we get the episode up. And then who knows, maybe we'll get to a point where we're daily, and maybe even in the mornings before you guys wake up for work, you'll get the news briefs. Oliver Klausoff, new U.S. territories, Canada, Greenland, Gaza, and Ukraine. No passports will be needed, folks. All for areas I have no interest in going to. Jamie Johnson, yes, it makes sense. Russia is not our problem. If we're going to be involved, we should gain something from it. I don't know if I agree with you on that one. I agree with you if at the outset of the war, Ukraine came to us and said, hey, we want to fight these people, and we'll cut you in on the deal, and we've got all these minerals here, so why don't you partner with us? You give us all this military equipment, we'll throw you the minerals. Then I see where you're coming from of, hey, if we're going to be partnering with them, why don't we get something out of it? But I think we were kind of running the show the whole time, and we kind of convinced Zelensky to do something that wasn't in his or his country's best interest. And maybe it turns out that the mineral deal is actually even a win for them because it means U.S. investment in the area, and that they'll be able to develop these things that they otherwise would just be leaving in the ground. And that means newfound wealth and a win for both of us. But if that's the case, the whole threat of looming war in America, security guarantees, I don't know, something's missing from the story. All right, let's take one more comment, and then let's get back into it. Well, good night. 14F down. I'm not going to read that one. That sounds, oh, wait, okay, it is a joke. Who wants to be the Pooh Bear to my CIA honey trap? For all those in the live chat, remember that if 14-year-olds are thrown at you, the answer is no, you are not interested. Nanobots and sperm, and they shouldn't be listening to the show anyways. This show is adults only. All right? So if there's children listening, you're uninvited. Go tell your parents on yourself, and play video games and do things that make more sense for your age range. Nanobots and sperm, a step forward or back in evolution. And, you know, people, the idea here is if you got weak sperm, you can get nanobot swimmers on the sperms so that the nanobots drive your sperm all the way. They get the lasers on it, and they shoot off whatever's in the woman that doesn't want the sperm to actually get into the egg, which is the whole process. There's an obstacle course. Usually there's an obstacle course there to make sure that you got strong swimmers. And so now science is coming in with nanobots so that if you've got weak swimmers, it can still get through the obstacle course. And then people are going, well, then if you get the weak swimmers impregnating the women, you're going to end up with the shitty, goofy kids that shouldn't have been made anyways because they're from the weak swimmers. But now you got to realize this is a scientific development, so it could turn out that the slowest sperms were actually the most thoughtful sperms. You know, they were the ones with the most ADD. They were checking out little details. We don't know if those won't make for good kids. I mean, for all of evolution, we've only been going with the fastest swimmers, and maybe the fastest swimmers are the rushers. They're the least thoughtful. They're the ones that just want to get things over with. Maybe those made for bad people this entire time. And we've been doing it wrong this entire time. And scientific developments to augment the natural process to give these slower swimmers a chance. Maybe the slower swimmers are the ones with like telekinesis and superpowers, but they just take a little more time getting to the sperm. And so we've had very few of them. Maybe those are the freak geniuses. We don't know these things. I'm just saying, sure, Fauci made us all anti-science because he represented bad science and declared it to be science. But I'm just saying, the slow, thoughtful sperms that maybe we've all seen the slower movies or the heavier set individuals that actually are freak geniuses and are really good at things. People that take a little bit more time staring and looking around. The rushers are not always the best at everything. That's all I'm trying to say. And so, you know, if we can stand for anything, it's give the weak sperm a chance. LA mayor removes fire chief over blaze response. They needed to throw someone under the bus, and they decided that this lady was manly enough that she could handle the firing. When they had to figure out who they wanted to throw under the bus, they said, go with the manliest person that we have, and that just turned out to be the lesbian fire chief. AG Pam Bondi vows to release bombshell Jeffrey Epstein documents, which could include the client list. And guys, I don't even want to hear about the client list. All right? I'm done with this whole client list. I don't care if you're on the client list. If you're on the client list, that could mean that you were really interested in kids, or I guess that could mean that you took a plane ride because you thought you were going to a free party. It's like a P. Diddy party. You know what I want to hear about is what happened to that safe. What happened to that safe that the FBI retrieved from his building and then claimed that they just lost? How does the FBI, why aren't those people being brought in front of a congressional hearing or fired? How do you work at the FBI? You retrieve what could be the most valuable evidence that's probably ever existed in all of humanity. We're talking about the Mossad CIA honeypot tapes. I mean, unless you're working for those organizations, that seems like some pretty interesting materials. And so the FBI goes into the house, they retrieve it, and then they just lose it. If we're going to be talking about the Epstein storyline here, the list is not that interesting to me because it seems hard to decipher between who the just, hey, oh, the elites are hanging out on Epstein's island, I'll go down and do that, versus the, oh, there's another party at Epstein's again. I'm just saying, I don't think everyone that went down to Epstein's island was in the know. You might have gotten down there and then did some things that you regretted, and then you should still be prosecuted for it. But I bet there were some people that things started getting weird around 10 p.m. and they're like, I'm going to my room. Do not send a masseuse. I'm not interested. I bet there's got to be at least a couple of those people. And on that note, I was looking at this picture again because it was in the articles. And you could just tell that Bill Clinton's sitting there being like, can we just skip this? Like, you could tell that lady does not have hands for massages. She doesn't know how to give massages. You could tell Bill Clinton's just sitting there going, this is ridiculous. And someone get me a better chair. I'm the president of the United States of America. All right. This is a fun headline. P. Diddy, I'm just going to go with P. Diddy, claims he's been singled out by racist U.S. law, clear case of selective prosecution. I thought, at least the first time I read that, I thought the lawyers were saying that. And then by the next day, one of his lawyers quit, said, under no circumstance can I continue. But the headline that was more interesting to me, firstly, it's funny for a lawyer to quit one day after that comes out. But, you know, and innocent until proven guilty. The court case hasn't happened yet. But the claims of that this is a clear case of selective prosecution and that it's only happening because America is racist. Remember this one. The next time you hear a politician making crazy claims, the next time you see like an Adam Schiff saying that Kash Patel is the most unqualified person ever, or you hear them saying, I single-handedly saw the evidence, these people are just lawyers, and this is the way that lawyers talk. Sometimes you forget and you think the politicians are in their own lane of career, and you forget they're just lawyers. And lawyers will lie as aggressively as they possibly can in order to win whatever argument that they can, and it's up to the judge and the jury to go, no, you are lying. And they're they're not like salespeople. Salespeople are not liars like this. Salespeople are like, I have to convince you in what's in your best interest because otherwise I'm stealing from you and I don't want to be a rotten thief. Lawyers, on the other hand, they feel like they're cheating and stealing from their client if they're not properly lying on their behalf. And so whatever the narrative is that you're trying to sell, you just have to lie in the most aggressive fashion possible. And so it's good to see these lawsuits and the way that lawyers will talk and say things like, this is only happening because my client's black, and this is a clear case of selective prosecution, just to keep in mind who politicians really are and just have a better understanding of their lingo. Angry Democrats turn off the flow of money. This is from The Hill. A second donor was equally as pointed. They want us to spend money, and for what? For no message, no organization, no forward thinking. that's clear. The thing that's clear to a lot of us is that the party never really learned its lesson in 2016. They worked off the same playbook, the same ineffective strategies, and to what end? And the Democrats currently have no bench. The best that they have is Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. That seems to be the only people they have that they can even slap on the news to try and sell their storylines. And I think what happens to the Democrats is, listen, if you're the government, you're trying to amass as much power as you can so that you can steal as much resources as you can. And the thing about it is that every once in a while, you have to pretend like you're working for the general public, and you got to return goods to the general public, because if you don't, they'll turn on you and they'll realize, hey, it doesn't seem like this green energy thing's really in my interest. Doesn't seem like this, convincing my kid that they're the other gender is really in my interest. Doesn't really seem to me like having my child get knocked out playing volleyball because you put a dude in there is really in my interest. And so I think it's like any business. When you get a little bit too greedy, you stop caring about your customer. Like, you're there to make money. You're a business. But then sometimes you get a little bit too greedy. You water down the product and you start losing your customers. I think that's what the Democratic Party is basically going through right now. And they're going to have to figure out how to rebrand as the populist party, as actually caring about working Americans. They're going to have to drop the trans nonsense and a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense they're going to have to drop off their plates. But they're even losing their donor base, who, from what I remember, were very upset at the end of the Kamala Harris thing, because they're like, you guys were telling us that this was in the books and you guys were winning. And we spent a lot of money on a lot of nothing. All right, a couple more topics that I'd like to cover, but we got another comment from Runaway Slob. Robbie, the Mann Act to counter sexy time trafficking is because the 1920s black boxer USA Jack Johnson would be driven from fight to fight state lines with white women in a Packard in the South. I don't know why I felt the need to read that. Why banks are flying gold bars on commercial flights from London to New York City. And the article is about the futures contracts and more of a spread. And it seems to me like they're trying to sneak some gold bars back into the U.S. before they take a peek at Fort Knox. Doesn't that sound that way to you? And they're just secretly flying some gold bars on planes all of a sudden at a high volume, and enough of a high volume that even the New York Post thought that it was storyline worthy. Seems like you guys, how many gold bars you guys got left to sneak before we can go take a look in there? Why don't we go check Fort Knox and whatever the location in London is that's supposed to have a bunch of gold at the same time and see what actually happens? And this is just what's happening on commercial flights. You think they don't have some submarine action going also? You think they don't have private individuals shoving it into their carry-on bags? Some real gay dudes making use of those big buttholes? All right, I think I had one or two. MSNBC cancels Joy Reid's Lefty Show as network makes major shakeup. And it's interesting that MSNBC would even be concerned with profits at this point. And you know why that is? I think that the USAID storyline and the ESG storyline and the pharma company storyline, and I think we don't know to the extent by which they were all relying on endless federal government money and full socialism to keep them afloat. And the fact that Donald Trump won this last election and it prevented us from going full central bank digital currency, full censorship of the internet. And remember what happened with Bud Light? I mean, I think we were really headed for full-scale socialism, and companies like MSNBC and people that were running windmills were all in on, hey, the government's going to send us endless money so that we could pretend like the windmills work and like we're the good news organization. And now that the free ride on that stuff is over, the internet remains free. People like me are able to get independent sponsors like Sheath and Yo Kratom, and we're able to do episodes. And at some point, if you guys want to do nothing other than not report the news on your networks, people are going to try and find truth and information. And for all the yelling that you guys tried to do that everything else was misinformation, it didn't really work. And it seems like these organizations are actually starting to get interested in profits because they have no choice but to actually provide actual information as they try and stay afloat, or at least they need a clean house and get some new bullshitters in, because the old class of bullshitters, everyone realizes, is completely full of shit. Or maybe it's just that these people's old contracts of, what they were able to do when they were all selling those vaccine shots, and so Pfizer was cutting them big checks. Maybe those big contracts don't make sense anymore. They forecasted for more endless government money being filtered to them through their sponsors of the pharmaceutical companies and the Boeings and the whatnots. And they didn't realize that it would restore free speech to the internet. It'd be harder to take down content, and that the sponsors would be paying to get in front of less and less people with a network that has less and less influence. But anyways, it's nice to see some of the big ones fall. It's nice to see some of the biggest dumbasses get taken off television so we could quit pretending like these guys are the elite of America. And even just to have that signal removed of this is what's worth, what was her contract? Probably $15 million a year. This is the best in journalism. It's nice to see anyone from that old world racket of just lying mouthpieces on the corporate press being removed from their posts. All right, and then last just news story that I want to share with you guys, and we'll find out if the new board plays the sound. You guys will let me know. If not, it's I think the last thing that I had for today. So it's not. Oh, last thing I had for today was Kash Patel being confirmed. There he is. I'm here with my hot wife, bro. We'll come back to that one. I don't have that much on it. It does have a pretty girlfriend. And there he is, separate from Donald Trump. And we'll see how that whole thing plays out. But I want to play this last video because what was interesting to me is, there are horror stories out there from Biden's open border policy. There's still storylines of missing kids. I don't know if we know about all the gang members. I don't know if we know about how many people died of fentanyl. But there's something interesting about the news lens of human interest stories, of the selective outrage of what they want to showcase to you. So, for example, now with USAID, instead of exploring all of the fraud and waste, some of the money, instead of going, hey, can we at least figure out how to get the money to some of these good causes, they're going, all these people are going to die, and forget cleaning it up. You guys are just trying to make these people that were getting AIDS treatments go and die. Or remember during COVID, when they were selling COVID and all the death, there weren't a lot of human interest stories about all the people that lost their businesses. If I ran Fox News, that's what I would have been doing every day, is the human interest stories of, and in New Jersey County, this person was forced to close their diner that was in their family for 30 years. And then interviewing the guy, I worked here 24 hours a day. My children started to work here. This was supposed to be a retirement policy, and Biden just ruined us. I don't know how we're going to live. Think about how many people lost their businesses during COVID. And, the statistics and numbers are not as interesting or as powerful as when you actually see. It's the same way as they showed us the random people at the beginning of COVID that were dying in hospitals. They could have done just human interests of the vaccine injuries, and they could have sold that storyline. And because what you're exposed to and what's repeated more, you think no one really pays attention to numbers. It's the Jaws effect. I think I read about this in the book Think Slow, Think Fast and Slow, whatever the book was called. It was a good book. And they were saying that after Jaws came out, people were significantly more afraid of sharks. Was there a higher risk of a shark attack post Jaws? Of course not. But you're more exposed to it. And that's why if every single day on CNN, the only thing they did was showcase to you, for example, school shootings, you'd be more afraid of schools because you're being exposed to it all the time. And even for all the time that we spend online and we spend with alternative media, the news, because they still have budget, which is probably just filtered from Fed money and whatever other racket, they have the budget that they're able to do the human interest stories. And sometimes they're tragic, but how many human interest stories have they done about Yemen when Saudi Arabia was funding a famine over there? Or most of the footage I've seen of the horrors in Gaza, that's all online. It's very rarely on, not that I watch the news stations, mostly clips that, I end up seeing online from the news stations. But here you have NBC News. All of a sudden, they're terribly concerned with the immigrants. When, they were just being taken over the border by cartels, and supposedly horrible things were happening to all sorts of people in all sorts of parts of the world as they were being sold on coming to America. There's open borders. This is your opportunity to get across. As people were dying of fentanyl because of, they're not covering any of these stories. But here we get a story showcasing the horrors of Donald Trump's policy as he acts on behalf of the American people and shuts down our border. And so here you have the complaints of the media on remember there were the kids in cages during Donald Trump, and then all of a sudden Biden comes around and he just processes everyone as quickly as possible to make sure that he never gets that bad press, which results in missing kids and the incentivization of more people coming over the border. But they never do those stories. And this story, it's not a good story. It's not a feel-good story. But I'm just saying there is like a very sharp and specific lens focus of what human suffering they want to actually showcase on. And with that, we can play it.
Striking scenes from the windows of this Panama hotel. Confined inside by Panamanian authorities on Tuesday. Migrant men, women, and children.
By the way, that looked like a Chinese guy. Even in their own video, that looks like Chinese guys. And that doesn't look like that horrible of a hotel. That looks like as nice as where I'm staying on the road. But let's continue.
Tuesday, migrant men, women, and children deported from the U.S. by the Trump administration sent messages to the outside world the only way they can. Some using lipstick to write, "Help us" on the glass. Two women scrawling, "We are not safe in our own country" on papers pressed up against the...
By the way, none of this is actually being done by Trump. That means Trump deported these people to Panama, and now Panama's keeping them in a hotel. This is not Trump doing this.
The window. Others resorting to simple gestures with their arms. An immigration attorney for one family says she was not able to speak to her clients inside the hotel. Of the nearly 3...
Oh, you guys are saying that the sound is echoing on me? All right. Well, anyways, it was more the video, and I will get that fixed for the next time. Annoying, but we'll get it fixed. Not worth complaining about, and I definitely don't need to show my screen of random shit. My porn folders. No. All right, that is our episode. Thank you for hanging out on the Run Your Mouth podcast. We will be back Wednesday with another episode. I think on Wednesday I have Steven the Wonder Boy, non-scientist, coming on to tell us about what is actually in that Yale study. And then probably even be back on Friday for another episode. So we're going to be cranking out a lot of content. Houston, Texas was a lot of fun. Got to hang out with some cool peeps. Came out for the shows. And then I saw a couple people I saw one person wearing the Prosecute Fauci shirts, which are available at robbernsteinmerch.com. I don't know why, but don't do the www. I would have thought you need the www.http. You don't want none of that. You just want to do robbernsteinmerch.com. And you can pick up your Prosecute Fauci t-shirts and then try and get them on the news. Try and get in the background. Try and wear them at sports games. Bring them to sports games, sell them to other people, get the bumper stickers, slap them on people's cars. All right, that is our show. Thank you for hanging out. And now I'm competing against the Part of the Problem stream, so go check out that show because we talked about all different topics.